Hello and welcome to a very overdue guide on Spyro free any percent. It's been 3.5 years since this guide was created. I've attempted this numerous times, and yet I've never been happy with the results. So I'm just going to accept that there will probably be a few mistakes, factually or not. I'll just make sure to correct myself in post. What's important is we have an updated resource for this game. Since the guide is released, the world record has dropped by about 9 minutes on PC and let's say about 6 minutes on console. Both of which are substantial, that a lot of that is just execution, but there are also new strategies that need to be discussed. I do hope to explain how I'm doing the tricks and everything, because it's no good just showing it. That's why we have the gamepad on screen as well. If you're unsure, hopefully seeing the inputs I do does help. But yeah, I'll do my best to explain as I go along. As always, brand new. I could use this save file here since Spyro 3 is untouched, but we'll go from scratch in 3, 2, 1. Now we do not start the main timing method until we gain control of Spyro, so you can watch these cutscenes if you wish. Just be careful not to skip them too quickly. There's no point getting a frame perfect skip here. If anything, you risk soft locking the game once you arrive in Sunrise, so we will avoid doing that. And then the run begins. So I would usually start by just charging off the platform, but I'll take a moment to explain what we're going to do. I'll be splitting PC and console respectively. I'll do the run on PC in full, and I'll edit in the console sections after the fact, because there are some differences, particularly at the start of the run. But I'll treat this like a brand new PC playthrough. So if I made my way over to the first egg of the run on the left, something weird will happen when I rescue Isabel. At the moment, if I hold, say, left and charge, I actually just go in a circle, because the camera, when I'm charging, follows me. If I just hold left without the camera, without charging, then I can sort of affect it with the analog stick on the right. So, as I'm looking, I'm just going left of where the camera is situated, because all I'm doing is moving the camera and Spyro's reacting. That kind of logic is what applies to these eggs, because when I collect Isabel, the camera is going to record the cutscene that plays. So I'm going to, as a speedrun, I'm going to skip through that as fast as possible and then start moving again. I do not want to sit around and do nothing. And if I just hold left and charge, expecting to do this big circle motion, you're going to see what happens. So let's walk up. And until that zap came through from Zoe doing the autosave, all I did was go in a straight line. To be clear, that is because the camera did not move. The camera stayed in front of the egg, even though I was way over here. And when Zoe zaps us, the camera resets to where I am. Throughout the run, there will be numerous eggs where you collect them and then there's another objective somewhere over here. So, you keep going. If the camera's not with you and you're trying to, control Spyro, it's confusing and doesn't feel good, can lead to you even taking a death or something. I know there's a bit in Icy Peak, which we'll get to later. You're right by the cliff edge as you collect the eggs. So yeah, if you're not prepared for that, you will just think you're turning left and you actually go right and die. What can you do about that? Well, assuming that I've just collected the egg, I can opt to learn the movement that I need to do after the fact, which is all well and good. But when you're starting out, you've got a lot of things to think about, and the movement you need to do for about 2 seconds after collecting an egg is not your number one priority, and I understand that. So hear me out when I say, if this movement after collecting an egg, the post-egg movement, is confusing, as soon as the egg cutscene ends, tap the look button twice, like this. And when you do, the camera, instead of being fixed in front of the egg, will lock back to Spyro. Post-egg movement, it's something you can learn, but you can also override it if you do not feel like, putting that into your memory banks just yet. But you'll see top runners doing it. I would advise watching them to see what it is they choose to do for these eggs. You can even work out your own post-egg movement if it works for you. But it just saves you a bit of time from standing here and waiting for Zoe. Over the course of the run, that's a fair few seconds you'd be losing, so keep that in mind. Something else to learn, which is a lot harder to sort of ignore, is the perfect hover. So this is a pretty tall jump right now. I could try to do a little glide up, but yeah, it's a little hard to figure out the distance. It's doable though. What I did just now, this is a perfect hover. I missed it, but I'll do it again. A perfect hover is just where you start your glide and you hover pretty much at the peak of your jump. And it's usually as soon as the gliding animation has begun. If I do it too early, of course, you just drop out of the air. So the timing is a learned thing. As you continue to practice the perfect hover, you will get more comfortable with it. I have a tendency to peel off to the side when I go. Like, I don't just line up straight ahead and do it, because that covers quite a lot of distance. You might think that's useful, but if we're trying to get up to a ledge, you might not have a lot of room to work with. So if I line up right here, there's no way I can do a forward glide. So if I just go off to the side, yes, it's still a bit awkward with the turn, but I can make that. And this is a really useful skill. This sort of breaks a lot of the game, because there are these things that you're not supposed to be able to navigate on your own. That's why there's this platform, which if I go onto it, I trigger Bianca, and this whole time the timer is ticking and I'm losing seconds. So no, I do not want to speak to Bianca. I would much rather skip her by lining up here and doing a variant of the perfect hover. Now, we did just start talking about Bianca skip. I'm going to phase back into the main recording in a moment, which goes on to talk about Amy. But here, the idea of the perfect hover, I could just go like that, right? Or do my little wiggle in the air. Part of what's working is using the rock itself, because if I lean into it, I can perform a wall glide. Now, there's not a whole lot of space here, and this particular rock has an auto hover in the middle. It's hard to replicate, but you saw it before. If I just hold into it at a certain height, the game gets confused and says, no, you can't wall glide there. And of course, I can't recreate it. But you see what's happening. I'm able to just sort of go along the rock without losing any height, and that gives me enough time. There it is. It gives me enough time to do a hover input. Because again, if I just rush it, I'd drop out the sky. There's this unwritten timing that you will learn best by just feeling for it. You know, hit the inputs too early or too late a bunch of times, and eventually that middle ground will stand out, and you'll be hitting these tricks very often. It goes without saying that Bianca Skip is more of a PC trick, because on console you would just talk to Bianca, but I will be elaborating on the console route after this, so thank you for watching this little detour, and we'll get back to the main recording. This is probably the first reset point you'll encounter. Amy Skip, as it's known, uses the signpost. We're going to get onto this cage. Despite where we stand, we can't reach the top of the cage from here. It's just a little too high up. Now, the wall gliding mechanic on PC has a unique trait. We will be able to gain some height as we go. The console cannot do that, so this is an exclusive strat. What I like to do is aim for the pillar I'm lined up with. I'm not even going to turn Spyro, just going to see what happens. So I'm going to do a full hop and push forward at the same time and glide. And you see I collided with the edge of the roof there, but I had a decent amount of time before then to input a hover. So I'll try and do that this time. And suddenly I'm 10 feet off the ground. In this position you can opt to charge up to this ledge, or if you want to play it safe you can glide around to reach Amy. All this does is save us the effort of going through this cave. There are a few gems in here. It's not slow as such, but this does save time, and that's what we're trying to do. Now, Sunny Villa, this is still the first split of the run, so if things are going badly, you may find yourself wanting to reset, but I would heavily advise just trying things. It's okay to have, you know, splits with mistakes in as you're learning. You're not going to have the perfect run off the bat. If you do, you will be thoroughly investigated. This is an interesting trick called Mile Skip. Again, we've talked about Wallglides. You can make your way up to the top of this section with a Wallglide. There are just a few stages to consider. If I just decide to glide over there, as you can see, not much is going on, and I'm going to fall to my death. You just have to approach it a little differently. So, as you're learning it, don't feel inclined to, charge from that position. You can just line up first. Try to use a bit of the wall on the right-hand side before the rock. These rocks in the front will get in your way, so I'm sort of trying to get in between them like this. And you see I made myself pretty far up the rock there. As I glide, I'm colliding with something unseen. The hitbox of the rock is quite annoying, but we can get around it with a little hover eventually. And when we hold around 2 o'clock, maybe more so, on the joystick, you ascend all the way to the top and you can hover your way up to Miles. There is a more advanced version of this, which is faster but certainly more precise, which doesn't involve hovering the first part. You will still have to hover at the very top. Well, it's recommended. You may get up there in a sort of janky way, but it's better to try and do something like this for hoverless. And that involved holding the correct angle on the joystick as we reach the rock hitbox. You just sort of skirt past it. It's pretty close. So once we get to here, post-oak movement is around there. We just want to make our way back to the center. You notice I'm not dealing with a lot of these small enemies. throughout the run, we want to value the higher value gems. It just saves us having to collect as much. In these early levels, we only have 400 gems per level. And since most levels are the same size, that means you don't need to... you would have to spend a lot more time collecting at this stage to get the same kind of gems as in later levels. So we're only trying to collect what we need and not much more than that. Looking for purple and gold gems most of the time. There's some interesting post-egg movement here. You can opt to wait for Zoe to zap us before moving, but I'm going to hold left, and then here I would hold forwards to get round. For this point in the run, I would say it's a pretty healthy gem count. Little cutscene there. You can skip a lot of the cutscenes in the game, and for PC, the loadless timer will tick throughout. It's good to save those precious seconds. To unlock the end of the level here, we have to flame the big enemy and chat to Leo. I'm sorry too. Now, when we exit the level here, the first split of the run will be complete. The auto splitter will say we've done Sunny Villa, and we'll move on with the run. There's two ways of exiting the levels, one of which is just exiting, which can be done from this menu or with the portal in front, or you can use the guidebook. For PC, the guidebook does have some benefits, as when we exit a portal, we will lose some time. The world outside will be rendered in, and whilst we're flying out the portal with no real control of Spyro, the timer starts ticking again. It's still often worth it if the portal is nearby where we need to go next. But in this case, the time we're going to lose in exiting the portal, doing the second part of Bianca's skip, which I will demonstrate, and guidebooking, well, guidebooking will save us a little time, whilst also giving us the opportunity to collect more gems. So firstly, let's exit the level normally. The timer will not be ticking here, but the timer starts again here. Now I have to glide out of that portal, otherwise I trigger the Bianca cutscene, and I'm now forced to do this again, which, as you can see, I'm not very good at. But instead, if I guidebooked back to sunrise even, in the time it takes me to exit that portal and do Bianca skip a second time, I can instead collect a few gems and even perform another version of Bianca skip here. There's even a PC exclusive setup on this side, which uses the Wallglide in the corner. So there's a lot of options for just the start of the run. It becomes a bit more linear now, but I just wanted to showcase a few of what you could be doing. So we'll make our way to the second level of the run. This will be where Hunter finally speaks to us. The first part of this is straightforward. You just talk to him, make your way over. We don't have to talk to him again for him to stay here, but if you go into the portal too fast before they've situated here, then they will jump back, and once we finish with the level, you have to speak to Hunter a second time. And that's definitely not what you want to be doing. Now, the previous way to do Cloud Spires involved going off to the left, but since then, the optimal way has always been a couple of Wallglides here, starting at this point. There's a 5 gem down there if you really want it. This trick takes a little bit of explaining, so I'm just going to take a moment to line myself up. We need to be standing on this point. We want to Wallglide our way to the opposing ledge. Now, if I just try to hold into the sort of rock here, We'll see what happens. Well, okay, never mind. That actually went the whole way. There's a risky auto hover point on there. If you're tapping into the wall slightly left and you collide with that, your glide will end prematurely and you won't be able to make it to the ledge over that. We'll just do that one more time. The way I tend to do this trick, you want to get a full charge jump first of all, so you don't want to go like, that was terrible, but even more exaggerated than what I mean. I do want to get as much height and as much distance as possible, as we are trying to cover this long gap. Even with the help of the wall, it's not always enough unless you can get the height. Then once we're basically touching the wall there, I'll tap into it slightly, 1, 2, 3 times. It's my usual setup. I delay the third input because it goes around the auto hover zone I talked about, and hopefully this makes sense when you see it. And it's not too bad at the end. Like, the hover at the end can be scary at first, but once you're comfortable with the height you're getting, the timing is not too precise. You can go quite far using this trick. You don't always have to aim for the closest point, but I would recommend aiming for this bit here as it's the closest point. There's one last thing to discuss here. In order to do this as seamlessly as possible, you can hold down left and charge, and you can just start your movement at the top of the whirlwind. That's an important skip. It allows us to reach Claire up here much earlier than the alternative. As otherwise, we would have had to complete the level, make your way back. You don't have to deal with money bags necessarily, but you do have to go all the way around through those Rhinox and back to here. Going to drop down now. Easy 5 gem. And another. Unlocking end of level will give us access to the next eggs we need. You do have the optional Sun Seeds minigame, but I'm not even going to show it because it's not particularly fast. It's just straightforward, so if you really need to cut something from the egg route, Sun Seeds could be your answer. First instance of super flight now. Get used to the up and down, left and right movements and your flame hitbox. These spirits are a bit annoying at first, but as you return to this part of the run more and more, you'll notice they are the same cycle each time. And the fastest way to grab this egg thief is using the super flight as well. Charging is a little slower, not to mention the timing of being able to turn around and aggro the egg thief. They move slower when they're doing their little jumping action, so you can pretty consistently catch them in the air. I only have one more egg left in the level. Grabbing a few gems as we go. Doing it in reverse is a pretty standard way of completing Spyro 3 levels, as they are all loops of some description. Let's talk about Stephanie and what I just did there. I did it a little too fast to explain. I had to take out this enemy before the egg trigger loaded. Then if I had just stood here, the egg would not have unlocked, because the trigger is expecting me to now enter this zone, but I'm already here. So I need to leave the zone and come back. There's a few ways of doing it, but I like to just go behind the egg and turn around. That's Cloud Spires. Done a lot of talking for the first 2 splits of the run, but that's because, well, compared to what's coming up, there's a fair bit to explain. We'll make our way to Molten Crater in a moment. And that's where the PC and console routes will converge again. Now we need to talk to Hunter for the second time and follow them over here. Even grabbing the 2 baskets back here if you'd like. I'll take a moment to talk about the gem route as well. I will be collecting more gems than I usually would, including most of the optionals that I consider. And it's up to you to decide what gems you would like for the run, because though many of them are, the same as what I would be grabbing, you may find others that you consider to be like optimal or convenient. We only need 2,300 gems for the entire run. So it's just something to keep in mind as you go. And you will collect most of your high value gems in the later hub worlds. So after talking to Hunter, we're going to turn around, make our way to Molten, and speak to Rocky. At last? What do you mean? I only just started. Make our way back here, rescue Liam, and into Molten Crater. There aren't too many differences between the PC and console routes for this category, but the ones that exist do need to be talked about, as simply emulating one route on the other form of hardware will lose you time over somebody who is playing more optimally. And being optimal on console is sometimes counterintuitive. We play off the in-game timer, which is in the top right, and that timer does not run when you're speaking to an NPC or watching a little cutscene or in a menu. Any sort of environment where you cannot open the guidebook is typically when the in-game timer is paused. It also is paused when you're exiting a portal. Stuff like that, which on PC you're explicitly thinking about to try and save time, doesn't matter on console so much. But that gives us access to basic things like talking to Bianca. There's no reason not to, the timer is paused. After grabbing Isabel, you can go straight up here, and yes, you can still perform Bianca skip, but you're actually at a disadvantage to somebody who just speaks to her. And that kind of logic will determine a few of the choices we make. Sadly, we cannot perform Amy skip the way PC does. Though you can line it up, you don't gain any height once in the corner there. You can still make your way to Amy on that ledge, but this jump is very difficult. It's definitely not impossible, and you can be practiced, learned, recreated in a run, given that, spawn is right there. You can reset until you hit it if you want. Essentially, it's a boosted jump where I would charge and then jump right afterwards to give me a bit more forward momentum using the signpost. So not much room to work with. The final part being this rock juts out just slightly, so you need to do a quick left tap to change your trajectory, and then you can do the glide into the wall, but you can only touch part of the wall, otherwise you won't gain the height you need. All of that said and done, it's very awkward. Amy skip on PC, very important. Console, optional. And I will go into that. Yeah. A few times I'll be auto hovering there. The rock does a pretty good job of blocking the way, but not good enough. So that's Amy. And well, from here it's just the PC route. If you watch that, we would just go through here, grab these gems. The only thing we cannot do is mile skip, but rather than go into Sunny now, I'm going to propose a different route, starting here. Instead of Amy skip and Sunny, the console route I suggest you learn, which the current world record pretty much does, goes to Cloud Spires first. it's pretty simple why. Going through the cave and grabbing Amy that way, not doing Amy skip, going to Sunny Villa, and then guidebooking back to here is only 2 seconds slower. And if you cannot recreate Amy skip, 90% of the time, then I would lose 2 seconds any day to get more runs going. It's not worth saving 2 seconds on the first split of the run and then losing it all to, I don't know, the out of bounds in Seashell Shore. The priority needs to be finishing runs, or at least getting runs out of Sunrise. So please do attempt this route. It's working for me a lot, and I encourage it. So you can still perform the same wall glide here. Just, going from PC to console, vice versa, you will feel the differences, particularly in just how console is a little more slidey to control. But this wall glide also very much can be recreated. If anything, I find it more forgiving on console. Just remember to give yourself as much of an advantage as possible. That involves the maximum height of your charge jump, cover as much distance as you can, and don't overdo it with the wall taps. You only need a couple of them to make it across, and I always do that third one just in case, but I'll save it till a little after the rest. I'll be playing through the remainder of the level, but this is exactly the same as on the PC segment if you watched that already. I figured not everyone will have. Just behind us there would be sun seeds. Not an egg I encourage you do, but certainly a straightforward alternative to some of the harder eggs in this route. Using the super flight, get the hang of aiming your flame hitbox. It comes out a bit earlier than you need to, but even if you miss one, you can just hover, turn around. And then catching up to the plane thief. Plane thief? Egg thief. Well, can be more trouble than it's worth. Pretty easy to recover as well. Overall, you'll see that it's very similar to the PC route once you're in Cloud Spires. The difference is that we did it first instead of Sunny Villa, and don't worry, we'll show Sunny Villa as well. But we'll start by just going over to Hunter here. Since we haven't grabbed Amy yet, we're going to go through the cave. Fastest way. I like to grab these 15 at the start, but then just charge your way to the end. The rest of the gems aren't too high value. This is where we'll grab Amy. And it's into Sunny, as you would expect. But once we're in the level, we have to deviate from the PC route, since we cannot perform miles skip the same way. Wallglides do not work like that. We'll have to do something else. After Vanessa, we can actually ascend the clock tower. Don't forget to grab this cheeky 5 gem. Big charge jump. Don't be afraid to hover if you're not sure. It's not worth falling down. Here's Miles. And although you could turn around to rejoin the center of the level and go forth, on console, a moment like this calls for a quit game, continue. The whole point of that, at the cost of RTA, is pausing the timer and teleporting Spyro a little bit closer to where we're going next. because now I'm going to reach this point maybe 2 seconds faster. And it seems silly, but you know, for as long as the in-game timer is the primary timing method, these are the kind of strategies that exist on console. And if you're afraid to use them because you don't like how it affects the RTA, then I understand. I also would love it if RTA was the primary timing method, but hardware just varies so much, and you know, it's not fair to put someone at a disadvantage because they can't afford a next-gen console. The remainder of Sunny Villa, nothing to report. Kind of skipped the cutscene, so we've got to watch it play out. Turn the corner. And there's only one correct option here after we speak to Mayor Leo. We've already been to Cloud Spires, so let's go back. This saves us running, I don't know, 7 or 8 seconds. And we exit the level. And we're one step closer to Molten Crater. Compared to the PC route, well, if you try to do this route on PC, you would lose more time to the optimal route. But it's still not bad at all. The use of the guidebook is very efficient. If you are not a fan of Amy Skip on PC, then feel free to give this route a try as well. But on console, this is only barely suboptimal. And for the sake of finishing runs, I do really think it's the best option you can do to an extent. Finally, we're gonna link up with the PC route in Molten Crater and keep the run going. Now, this is a pretty straightforward level. We're not going to be engaging with too many enemies. Our goal is just to go around as many as we can and drop down here to grab Ricky. There's some post-egg movement here to hopefully avoid getting hit into the lava. I hold down left and then jump flame to deal with that enemy. You can also turn around. Oh yeah, left trigger centers the camera, as does double tapping look. So just a few ways to prepare your next action. But yes, taking out this enemy is important because you'll get hit in the air, hit in the lava. Not a fun time. But of course there's fodder all around. Hello Zoe. Again, dodging past these enemies, make sure to flame that one before you jump through. Couple extra baskets. Try to use the side here rather than having to jump up each step one by one. Now there will be a few more eggs grabbed later in the run, but because we can't access the bird portal yet, and because we need to pay money bags and we have a pretty low gem count, we're not going to do that right now. A great thing about SRT is access to the guidebook. Sort of feels like cheating when you consider how much effort it is in the original games to get between levels. You have to unlock the luxury of teleportation. We'll grab a few 10 gems there. Bruce under the water here. Swimming does take some adjusting in Spyro, but just keep trying. I'll take a moment to discuss the optional eggs you can pick from in this route. I will also name the other eggs you could pick from, but which I don't recommend. So coming up in the next level, we've got Bluto. Later on, we have Subs 2 and Lost Fleet. And then you also have Tanks 2 in Haunted Tomb, and the tunnel egg from Dino Mines. When it comes to picking them, the most optimal for PC is a shootout between Bluto and Subs 2 and Tanks 2, because access to mouse and keyboard really helps a lot for Tanks 2, making it a bit more trivial than what console would have to deal with. Whereas on console, again, Bluto Subs 2 comes down to your preference, but the tunnel in Dino Mines is mandatory. IGT, in-game time, does not tick when you're in one of these tunnels, such as the one we're going to see in Seashell. And that means compared to any other egg, you're saving an easy 30 seconds, if not more. The other optional eggs you could consider would be Sun Seeds, which is slow but consistent, and it's also very early in the run. You have the boxing eggs in Frozen Altars. Those were integral to the old route, but because we access Frozen Altars first to be able to afford Bentley, it's slower to have to revisit Frozen. Even the boxing one is extremely fast. Then later you still have access to moles in Crystal Islands. Consistency there is a bit of a pipe dream. Definitely need to be quite lucky to make it work, but there is a known setup to try and help with that. And then there's also the Sharks minigame in Desert Ruins. Since there is also a cycle-based way of dealing with that, like subs, it's just a little too out of the way to be faster than the other eggs I've mentioned. Don't charge everywhere is a good ethos to have, because it won't be too easy to navigate if you just charge all the time. With that said, we don't want to be slow, so we're going to try and take the most direct lines possible to our next goal. We're going to do a very cool out of bounds shortly. It's the only one in the run and one of the few in this game. But even before that, we have to be able to perfect hover up to this ledge. I haven't talked too much about perfect hovers yet, so this is a good opportunity to. All I'm doing there is a full jump, a little wiggle in the air, so I'm going to glide, but I'm actually going to hold a direction as I do it. And I can make this gap, which is a lot faster than having to go all the way back there. There's a lot of barrels on the screen, but the only ones that matter to us are the ones in front. I'm going to line up against the wall and take some damage. And whilst I've got invincibility frames, I'm going to get pushed through the wall by the next barrel. So let's see what that looks like. I also like to position the camera as such so I know when to jump. The crucial part is the jumping action. And now we're outside the entire level. But that's no good. Oh yes, this looks ridiculous. We do need to then utilize the out of bounds. Just getting out of bounds is fun, but we're doing a speedrun. So why on earth would we need to go out of bounds? It's because we haven't unlocked Shiela yet. Again, it's another gem requirement that we haven't paid for and don't have the funds for. So again, we're going to position like so, perfect hover up, perform the damage abuse. On the right here is a little portal. This is the only one stored, as some of the OG portals are very similar to that. It's a shame that there aren't more examples of it in SRT. But yeah, that's a really cool sequence break. We now have access to the Shiela side area. We need both of these eggs for the run. This is Shiela, redesigned for SRT. I'm doing a little kick jump here. You can just do a high jump, but I like to do the kick jump because you still get a lot of height and also forwards momentum. All that is I press the kick button as I perform the double jump action. There's Jared. Currently on 17 eggs, which is pretty good going. You can time a kick to grab both of those. And now, this sandcastle minigame. Keep in mind, we only need to destroy the green metal parts of the structure. We can ignore the boxes. In OG, they were the sand. We can kick our way through to this one. Collect as many of the 5 gems as you can, but you probably will miss 1 or 2. Don't worry about it. And there we go. Later on, I might include the gem totals just on the screen for where I would usually aim for. Usually you just glide over to that step there and make your way in. It is also possible to glide straight over there, but you have to kind of go off this point, as it's the closest part, and time your jumps precisely. So that means getting the highest glide possible and then hovering at the right time. This will be the first crossroads of the run, as usually I'd go down there to the tunnel. We also have an opportunity to fight Bluto the Rhinoc. Now Bluto can be quite a fast egg, but it does depend on what they do. I'll still be demonstrating all the optional fast eggs so that you can pick what you prefer to do. Vehicle controls are a part of SRT. It's unavoidable. They feel awkward at first. Take the time to just practice moving before you face the bosses. It will help. We already have a few torpedoes, but Bluto has 16 hit points, so we're going to need to pick up 4 boxes at least, assuming we hit every shot. Sometimes you can go for a pot shot here, but I don't think we can go more than that. I'm just going to opt to go into here and see what they do. This is not an ideal start, because when Bluto grabs ammunition at this stage, it means he's going to have time to go underwater afterwards. So I still need 1 more box. During that time I could have been shooting. Trying in some distance and I can get a few chips in. Because he's picked up boxes, he has torpedoes of his own. But this is where they get greedy. They want more torpedoes. It's a prime opportunity to take them out. Bluto can also heal themselves, so we don't want to prolong the fight. If you find that you're having a hard time aiming, just pick up more torpedoes than you need. Of course, if the fight takes quite a long time, it's not necessarily the best option for the speedruns, but you'll see some of the top runners still go for this trick, as with the right cycle, it can be done in about 25-30 seconds. But after that, we would rejoin with the other fork in the road, because we still need to grab the egg in here. This is not too difficult of a side area, but it's quite high risk as well. The reward you get is not too great. It's just an egg. But if you fail this later down the tunnel, you lose 20 seconds, and there's not much you can do about it. So get comfortable with the turns. The Rhinocs don't move, so once you have failed it a couple of times, you might find you know where you went wrong. Pay attention to the gamepad if you need a bit of a guide. See, here in particular, I just want to hold a direction to ensure I don't miss a few of the Rhinocs. And we're just about done with Seashell. This will be the first level we grab all the eggs in. I want to discuss also, on PC in particular, the timer doesn't stop when we're in NPC dialogue, some of the cutscenes, so you do want to be skipping them as fast as you can. Menus as well. This whole time the timer would be going. So once you're comfortable with the inputs, try to practice quitting quickly. It's little things like that that you'll see top runners doing. Shave off as much time as possible without making major mistakes. Here we have the first and technically only speedway of the run. And I'll grab a few gems as I go. There's a few more 5s around there if you really need them. Now, I spent a great deal of my speedrunning career in Mushroom Speedway, but I'm going to attempt to keep it simple. All we need to do first is follow the rings. At this next bit, we'll start our long supercharge. I like to start it in the air, just to get a little more speed on the ground. If for some reason, like here, you might like, oh no, I've bonked. You can continue as a glide, and it's not too bad. The only times you would start charging again, really, is when you need to build up speed. Ooh, didn't mean to fall off there. If you can't build up speed, then supercharging's not really worth it. Superflight is not slow. Anyways, we're still making our way through. These spiders, you've got to make sure your flame hitbox is lined up, so once you're comfortable with that, no major issues. It's going to be a little tight with the butterflies. I'll go for the strat I usually do, which is flaming high, charging low. It's not the only way to do it, but it is the fastest way to do it. And even demonstrating optionals, I still made it in time. You do get a minute and 10 seconds to do it. You can do it as fast as about 45, 44 seconds, usually. But anything that involves getting it done in one take is still good enough. Not only do we get an egg for that, we also grab 400 gems.
I've decided to also include a run through of the time trial with no mistakes. As you can see, I'm taking a inside line through the rings to shave off 1/10 of a second or so. You don't have to take it like that. I tend to do unnecessary adaptations for my time trials. Now, heading through the dandelions here, you will have to cancel your supercharge in this cave, but you can start up another one to get you to about here. The spider cycles will vary a little bit, but as long as you're paying attention, it shouldn't pose much of a problem. As for the butterflies, I always go for this strat, but you can also go through the middle and sort of aim your flame up and down to catch them. Alternatively, you can just deal with each level of butterflies at a time.
There's one more egg here. The secret hunter challenge is just on this side, so you can use the supercharge to get there a little faster. UFOs are a bit infamous, particularly at the start. There's going to be a UFO that spawns in right in front of us, and if we don't take them out, the attack they send our way pretty much kills Hunter immediately. So I'm going to demonstrate what happens if we don't get that, and then I'm going to demonstrate how I would take out the first enemy immediately. So I'm getting the second one. Yeah. Bit of a pain. Even if I miss it, I can aim up with the plane to get out of its way, and then focus on the rest of the UFOs. I'm not really using the boost of the plane too much. I'd only use it like here to try and make up for lost time. However, there is a faster way of doing that, which I would like to demonstrate before we leave. And that's important because with a lot of the side areas and challenges, they're only included in the speedrun because they average out at a good time. I'm going to do this as fast as we can without dying. And that's a pretty standard UFOs. What would happen after Sparks gives us the second egg is we'd immediately retry, open the guidebook, and make our way back to Cloud Spires. This is useful because we could exit Mushroom Speedway and run all the way back to where Shiela is, or we could teleport over halfway there with all of our gems and eggs in a matter of seconds. Just remember, you have to exit Cloud Spires to make our way back to here. A few 10 gems as we go. You could also guidebook to Sunny for the same result, but remember in this run we haven't spoken to Bianca yet, so we have to perform Bianca skip again. Spyro. Okay. Moneybags has been paid. Shiela is freed. Let's continue. Yeah, no worries. We've already spoken about Sheila's controls. This is an escort mission, so we do want to ensure the billy goats are constantly heading to their goal. This is a good opportunity to grab some high value gems up there. Sometimes the billy goats get stuck down below. I tend to advise just make sure that they're both standing there before you kill that Rhinoc. Because if you kill the Rhinoc too early, they might walk into each other and they won't move. Still, you'd only lose a couple of seconds. I would like to be gold sparks before the boss, so easy fodder to grab. A few more high value gems around as we go. Speak to Pete. This final section, I'm going to try and do some fast head bashes on the mushroom huts. Not using the giant red targets on the roofs, but instead the doors and the windows. If you push up against them, you can do a ground pound. Or a head bash, I don't know. It's a ground pound for Shiela, a head bash for Spyro. And you see, if I don't deal with the huts, more will spawn. We're now on a timer whilst the billy goat runs back, so just try to make your way here about the same time. And that's Sheila's Alp done. Sheila's Alp for console runners benefits from speaking to the billy goats. You'd think you're losing time, but it gives these goats time to position themselves, and you don't have to wait around so long to pick them out. The downside being that you're not grabbing gems like these. But if you don't need them, then there's a couple of seconds to gain with these little NPC tricks. There is one more like that, just in the final section. So to clarify, yes, the time is pausing when we're speaking to the NPCs. Meanwhile, the other NPCs are walking into position. And you don't end up in a situation like this, where I'm waiting for Pete to finish moving. If you wish to incorporate that strat, you can do this section in reverse. Once again, clearing the huts at the same time as the Rhinocs, hopefully, for maximum efficiency. Then right at the end here, let's take out the last two. We've got to wait for the billy goat. You can chat to Zoe for a couple seconds. Keep that timer paused. It's not the most noble strategy, but once again, we are trying to be optimal.
Let's head on over to the balloon.
This is important. If we don't speak to Shiela here, we don't get warped. And we do want to arrive by the balloon as fast as possible. You could also exit the Seashell portal, I guess, and go straight over, but it doesn't really save time. Some other categories might do that anyway. We're going into Buzz's dungeon now.
Listen.
This level kills a lot of runs. Buzz is very unforgiving. It's a simple premise. The problem is that there's lava everywhere. So we do need to avoid taking damage where we don't need to. I'm on full health. I'm going to try and utilize that to get through the fight quicker than usual. Starting off, you can sort of... You can manipulate which way Buzz will go, but there's nothing wrong with waiting to see which way they jump. I've done this fight so many times that I do know the initial start. I took damage on the first hit just to avoid his big rolling attack, which takes up a lot of time. This would be known as phase 2, and the fastest way to get through is to walk into his flame shield, and then you can get a hit onto him. Now I'm getting quite low on health. I'm still going to go for this. Once again, take out the flame shield. As he's coming back on the stage, I'm standing right by the edge, but close enough to Buzz's position that he's not able to complete a big charge. This final hit, he drops his shield quite low. Now I want to demonstrate his attack also. He just goes around in circles until he catches us, but he's never able to as long as you continue to move. Finally. Sometimes he's got a phantom hitbox for that flame attack, so I tend to hold down after I've charged into him, just to make sure I don't collide with it. But hey, it's good to be on at least one level of sparks to give you that safety. You do not want to be losing a minute to Buzz. It basically kills your entire run. So one of the good parts to practice until you are very confident. With that, we have completed Sunrise Spring. There's more I could say. It's already been quite a long part of the tutorial, so we're going to leave Sunrise there for now. Thank you very much for watching part 1. Next up, Midday Gardens. We'll continue right where we left off.